For years, the IRA terrorised Northern Ireland with bombings and attacks being all but too common. In this video, I'm going to be covering the deadliest of these attacks carried out in the name of reunifying the people of Northern Ireland with their brethren to the south, the Omagh Bombing. On the 15th of August 1998 in Omagh, Northern Ireland, a car bombing would be carried out by members of the Real IRA, which resulted in the deaths of 29 people and the injury of a further 300. But why were these attacks carried out, and how exactly did the perpetrators manage to pull off such a large-scale bombing? Also, what happened to the men responsible? To answer that first question as to why, I need to give you a brief overview of who the IRA are and what they are fighting for. The IRA, otherwise known as the Irish Republican Army, is a name used by various paramilitary organisations in Ireland with a shared goal of reunifying Northern Ireland with their fellow countrymen to the south. From the late 1960s to 1998, the IRA were engaged in a fierce conflict with the British known as the Troubles. The Troubles are a very complicated topic in their own right, so I'll only be covering the part towards the end which is relevant to the Omagh bombing. If you want me to go further in depth on the Troubles, let me know in the comments and I'll definitely get around to it. In 1997, as the Troubles were starting to die down, there was a temporary ceasefire put in place by the IRA and the British. Despite sharing a name, the IRA was quite divided, and many of its members fiercely opposed this temporary ceasefire and broke off, creating the group this story mainly revolves around, the Real Irish Republican Army, or RIRA for short. The RIRA had the same goals as the IRA, and the only real difference between the groups is that the RIRA refused to acknowledge the 1997 ceasefire, as well as the Good Friday Agreement, which is widely recognised as being the end of the Troubles signed in 1998. As well as having the same goals, it is worth pointing out that the RIRA used the same guerrilla tactics as the IRA. These tactics were mainly to target the British security forces and carry out bombings on places of symbolic or economic importance, thereby damaging the British economy and causing severe disruption, which in turn put pressure on the British government to withdraw from Northern Ireland. Now that we know who they are and what their goals are, let's get to the actual point of this video, shall we? On the 19th of August, a maroon 1991 Vauxhall Cavalier that would ultimately become the car used in the attack was stolen from outside a block of flats in Carrickmacross, Ireland. At the time, it bore the County Donegal registration number of 91DL2554. But shortly before the bombing, the perpetrators replaced its Irish number plates with fake Northern Irish ones and loaded the car with about 230 kilos of fertilizer-based explosives. On Saturday the 15th of August 1998, the bomb car was driven from County Monaghan across the Irish border to Omagh with a scout car driving ahead to warn the bomb car of any checkpoints. At 2:19 p.m, the bomb car was parked outside S.D. Kell's clothes shop on Omagh's Market Street at the eastern edge of the town centre near the crossroads with Dublin Road, as the driver could not find a parking space near the intended target of Omagh Courthouse. Upon parking, the two male bombers armed the bomb and set the timer to detonate in 40 minutes. They then walked east down Market Street towards Campsie Road before leaving Omagh in the scout car. At around 2:30 p.m, 3 phone calls were made warning of a bomb in Omagh, using the same code word that had been used in the RIRA's bombing in Banbridge 2 weeks earlier, Martha Pope. The first call was telephoned to Ulster Television saying, "There's a bomb, Courthouse, Omagh, Main Street, £500, explosion 30 minutes. 1 minute later, the office received the second warning saying, "Bomb, Omagh Town, 15 minutes. How 15 minutes passed in the space of only one, however, remains unclear. The caller went on to claim the warning on behalf of Oglag Neheran, which translates to Soldiers of Ireland. Sorry for the bad pronunciation, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but I just gave it a guess. Another minute later, the caller and office of the Samaritans received a call stating that a bomb would go off on the main street of Omagh, about 200 yards from the courthouse. The recipients of these calls subsequently passed on all of them to the local police. After hearing of this news, the police began evacuating the area, but sadly the warning was unclear as the callers mentioned Main Street when there was no street by that name in Omagh. Although Market Street High Street was the town's main shopping street, it runs for hundreds of yards from east to west. Given the content of the warnings, the police obviously believed that the bomb would go off near the courthouse, so they evacuated the surrounding buildings and streets, which unfortunately moved people away from the courthouse and towards the side the bomb had actually been placed, as if you recall, the bombers couldn't find a car park close enough to the courthouse. At 3:10 p.m, as the police cleaned an area near the local courthouse, the bomb went off. It tore the car into deadly shrapnel and created a fireball and shockwave. Helpless civilians were caught in a storm of glass, masonry, and metal as the blast destroyed shop fronts and blew the roofs off buildings. The blast was so strong that it tore up concrete and caused pipes to burst. 21 people were killed outright in the monstrous explosion, with a further 8 dying on their way to or in the hospital as the water running down the street turned red. Injured survivor Marion Radford described hearing an unearthly bang followed by an eeriness, a darkness that had just come over the place. Then the screams came and she saw bits of bodies, limbs, on the ground while she searched for her 16-year-old son Alan, who unbeknownst to her had been killed a mere yards away from her. The hundreds of injured were initially taken to 2 local hospitals, the Tyrone County Hospital and the Erne Hospital. Inevitably, the Tyrone County Hospital quickly became overwhelmed and were forced to appeal for local doctors to come in and help. Due to the sheer amount of injured civilians, many had to be transferred to other hospitals in Northern Ireland, including the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast and the Altnagelvin Hospital in Derry. A Tyrone County Hospital spokesman stated that they alone treated 108 casualties, 44 of whom had to be transferred to other hospitals. Paul McCormick of the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service recalled of the events of that day. The injuries were horrific, from amputees to severe head injuries to serious burns. Among them are women and children. Once this horrific bombing was all said and done, 29 people had been killed, with as many as over 300 being injured. Despite the destruction and devastation they caused, the very men that planned and executed this attack would never be confirmed nor prosecuted. Despite the fact that directly after the attack, the IRA claimed responsibility for the bombing, and their code word was used. However, it is still somewhat debated about whether it was the IRA or not, as on the 7th of February 2008, an IRA spokesperson stated that the group had minimal involvement in Omagh. Our code word was used, nothing more. To have stated this at the time would have been lost in an understandable wave of emotion. Omagh was an absolute tragedy. Any loss of civilian life is regrettable. If you would like to believe the word of a terrorist who waited 10 years to come out with this statement, go ahead, but I won't. I personally think that the IRA's involvement is undeniable and shouldn't even be in question. But let's not get into responsibility and conspiracy theories right now. I think this story should be a precautionary warning for all of us. Let us not forget how lucky we truly are to even be breathing at this very moment. Let us never pass up an opportunity to tell our loved ones how much they mean to us, as no one knows when it will be their last chance. Sorry for ending this one on such a sad note, but unfortunately, that is often the case with history. If you had any suggestions or any future videos you'd like me to do, make sure to leave those in the comments below. I hope you all have a great day, night, wherever you are, and I hope to see you in the next one.